Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. Happy Saturday. Welcome to Unfiltered. I'm your host, Chaps McFarlane. Thank you for joining the show this evening. We are excited for the show this evening, and we have a young lady here who's incredible, and we're excited for this conversation. If you're just joining us, please like, share our videos, start a watch party, if you will. We enjoy when our viewers share our videos and invite others to join. Before I proceed, I would like to let you know this. The postings and discussions on the show and all the materials related to this show represent the views and opinions of this show and not the views and opinions of any of my employers, past or present, or the employers of the guest on the show, past or present, just so we are clear on that. Thank you again for joining. Our guest is right in here with us. We're going to go right ahead and get things going. I'm just going to be introducing our guest to you. Ms. Provo, you can come on.
Hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Just turn your video on if you can.
I think, okay.
Oh, there you are.
Hi.
Thank you very much for coming. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Unfiltered. I'm your host, Chaps McFarlane. I'm here with Ms. Kardeisha Provo. Ms. Kardeisha Provo is from Nova Scotia, but resident in Toronto. And I'm just going to give you a quick background on Ms. Provo. Kardeisha Provo is a filmmaker born and raised in North Preston, Nova Scotia, based in Toronto. She strives to make herself, her community, and the world better through creative visual storytelling. Kadeisha is a recent graduate of the Remix Project 15.0 film program. In 2017, Ms. Provo launched a self-titled YouTube channel that highlighted members of North Preston in an attempt to shed light on her community and challenge misrepresentations. In 2018, She won the Nova Scotia Human Rights Award for her visual storytelling that has gained national and international attention. Her main goal is to shift the minds of her people to not only see themselves as greater than they are portrayed, but to showcase their collective success. Kadeisha wishes to continue to be an advocate for youth, and by bringing barriers bridging barriers of communication through how we exist online. Her work extends beyond her YouTube channel and into many sectors dedicated to the growth of the Black community in Canada. She speaks her truth and challenges the perceptions of the experiences of Black people in Canada. Miss Kardeisha Provo, welcome to you, and thank you very much for accepting to be on the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us, and welcome.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you reaching out. So yeah.
Thanks. So why don't we get right into it?
Yep.
Why don't you, I just went through your bio there, but why don't you add us a little more flesh and tell us a little bit about yourself and you know, experiencing life growing up in North Preston and then moving to a big city, Toronto.
Yeah, I mean, the bio is like, it's always so hard for me to like write bios and stuff like that about myself, because you kind of look at your life a little bit different than how other people view you. But I mean, I would guess like, you know, I grew up in North Preston, and that was an interesting experience for many reasons. And then to have moved to Toronto, it's a whole different life here. Everything is way busier. Everything is fast paced, and people, you know, don't have that like Scotian mentality over here.
Right.
But it's still a good time for me as like a young entrepreneur, young creative, to be in a big city, because you know, you get to live by yourself. You get to have experiences that you wouldn't have in Nova Scotia, especially coming from North Preston. Like, you know, we were pretty isolated. Like our community is pretty isolated to Dartmouth, to ourselves, and there's not that many opportunities for us to see, you know, a big wider world from there. So it's good when someone like me, who gets out of the community but then still connected to the community, showing the kids like, oh, like, you know, there's something bigger than Nova Scotia, but at the same time staying connected to our roots is something that's really important to me. So yeah.
That is very, very true and very, very important. So how does your African Nova Scotian heritage, and especially being a young Black woman living in a city that's considered one of the most diverse cities in North America, how has all of that shape and guide your worldview?
I mean, I guess like coming from like Nova Scotia, where I've been kind of conditioned to see everything in black and white, you know, it's not very multicultural there like it is now in Halifax, but in Dartmouth specifically, like, you know, we kind of only went to school with white kids and black kids, and that was it. But then to come here, it was interesting, because like there's so many different cultures, so many different religions, so many different everything, and you feel small, if that makes sense, but at the same time you feel so big, because like I'm coming from a place where like to be a Black woman is such an amazing thing. So I'm walking into a space where like I'm kind of small, but then like I'm walking as if I'm walking with like every ancestor that's ever been before me. So it's an interesting space though. Like I would say that's the best word to describe it, because some days you feel really powerful and really powered by people of color in general, you know, and
Right.
then other days you feel kind of like, I don't know what to do in this situation. I don't know who to turn to, who understands my experience. So yeah.
Interesting. You are a visionary, and I want you to tell us a little bit about your vision. I mean, you were telling the stories of your people, you know, through visual art. So you came up with this art of visual storytelling, and you actually have an interesting clip on your channel, which is telling the story of of a Black woman and all the kinds of support systems that come to make her be the fullness of who she is. So tell us a little bit about your vision for the future in this space that you're creating for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, since I was like younger, like I definitely had a lot of room to dream, I guess. I give that thumbs up to my parents for specifically always allowing me that space to like travel and to like do different things and able to dream a little bit bigger than outside of, I guess, my circumstances.
Right,
Um and in that you kind of like as you grow older, the dreams kind of get bigger because you start to see more and you start to see yourself in those situations. Um, so that is a big part of it for me. And like I just want more out of life in all aspects, I guess. So yeah.
right. So let me ask you this. What is the biggest challenge you faced in bringing sort of your idea of storytelling
Mhm.
of our people? What are the challenges that you faced in sort of bringing this vision to life? And how did you overcome these challenges?
Sorry, could you ask that again? I couldn't hear what you said.
Yeah, I was asking, what are some of the challenges as a young visionary that you have faced in trying to bring your vision of visual storytelling art to
Mhm.
life? I know that's not the only thing you do, and we're going
Yeah,
to talk about some of those other things, but
yeah.
just in general, what are some of the challenges, even being a young human rights advocate,
Mhm.
who has gotten some of the highest recognitions that we have in this province? So what are some of your challenges that you faced?
I mean, one of the biggest things that I've been seeing more recently has been just navigating through the film world, I guess. That's something that's kind of new to me, but like representation matters, right? And like I didn't really grow up with visible, you hear names, of course, but you don't really get to touch those people that are part of that world that you're entering into. So a big part of that was like not me having to like build up the confidence to see myself in the world that I dream of being in. And then as far as like, side of the storytelling, it's like I have a lot of access to a lot of these stories, but I don't have the resources to create them, if that makes
Mm.
sense. And like that's been a really big thing for me because I'm like, okay, well, how do I get funding or how do I hire a cinematographer or an editor or just a producer, someone to help me kind of like get these stories off the ground because like I feel really, really confident in my access to getting those stories and telling them in a particular way. But in terms of gaining the resources that I need to like get those off the ground, it's been kind of hard to find those, whether that's through funding or anything like that. So yeah, that's been really tough.
Well, hopefully by the end of this segment and subsequently, we're going to have a lot more people buy into this really creative idea of telling our stories through visual art and film,
Mhm.
and maybe make some resources available. But tell us a little bit about your passion for filmmaking. How do you come about that? I mean, you started studying pre-med.
Yeah, that's how I started in university. I started with in biology, and then I'm moving into marketing and film. Um and I mean that journey is again like I wanted to be a doctor my whole life because I thought that's what my purpose was. And it's just kind of the thing, like, that's you want to make your parents proud, you want to make your grandparents proud.
Right.
That's like kind of those jobs are kind of the only things that they really know about. And to be like a director or a filmmaker, that's not really something that we've had in our community. So for me to step out of that and be like, okay, mom, I don't want to be a doctor anymore. I want to be a director. That's like unknown. And that's like not a guaranteed future in their eyes. But it's still it's a learning process, a learning curve that I'm going through. And I'm really happy I made the decision because I have a lot of support behind it, both my family and then also my friends and other creatives in this city, specifically Toronto, that really, are part of the journey too.
What can you tell other young people like yourself, young women especially, who have had a passion for one career, started out, their studies aiming for that career, and then are now thinking, you know what, I might have a lot more other talents like we all do that I could explore that have been untapped, and that might lead me in another direction. how do you tell or advise someone like that on their mindset in terms of switching programs in university midway?
I mean, I would say like you really have to take time to really figure out what you want. Like I think for me after high school, if I would have taken at least like a semester or a year off, I would have probably figured out earlier that I wanted to do filmmaking and something in the creative world instead of, kind of going in, spending that money and doing biology. But at the same time, it's like you have to forgive yourself for changing and like understand that you're not supposed to have it all figured out when you're fresh out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas that's something that I thought I was supposed to know because, I had scholarships, I had support, I had friends that like really wanted me to succeed and family that really wanted me to succeed. But I really didn't have, like mentally, I didn't know that what I wanted to do. So I really rushed into it. But I mean, yeah, I think it's really just taking the time to make that decision, whether it's taking a semester off or a year off and kind of jumping into it after it's school.
Can you tell us about some of the projects that you have on the go in the filmmaking space?
Yeah, right now I'm working on, I'm writing a lot right now, kind of putting together some short films and writing something about, not really my experience growing up in North Preston, but the experience of a young girl who kind of has a story similar to mine, but also has a story similar to a lot of my peers around me. That's something that I've been actively working on right now, writing that, and then eventually wanting to film that in the summer in Nova Scotia.
Mm.
And just kind of doing a lot of different things like freelancing and all of that stuff. But a lot of that's on pause this week because of all of these crazy things that are happening.
Yes,
um,
yes. So why
but
don't
I've
we
been
talk
spending,
about that?
yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a tough thing like the past few days because, if I'm freelancing and that's how I'm making my money and that's how I'm paying my bills and all that stuff, everything's getting canceled.
Right.
So it's like, no, there's nothing really. It's kind of like unknown in this position, especially like I'm starting out. So like I'm really relying on like capturing events and doing behind the scenes videos for big productions and stuff like that. But they're kind of all on hold.
Mm. So yes, the coronavirus it's a pretty scary event going on. I mean, the pandemic is causing a lot of psychological and
Mhm.
economic and social panic. But I hope that we in Canada are going to be least impacted. The government seems to
Yeah.
be taking a lot of very proactive measures, which we want to applaud
Mhm.
in trying to stem the tide of this epidemic. And I
Mhm.
think, as the health officials and experts have said, everybody can do something to flatten the curve and
Yeah.
ensure that the tide of this epidemic doesn't spread. So please, all of our viewers out there, take preventive measures. You know what to do. There's a lot of information out there on how to take preventive measures. If you're just joining us, this is Unfiltered. I'm your host, Cheps McFarlane. We have a very incredible guest here, Miss Kardeisha Provo. Miss Kardeisha Provo is resident in Toronto. She's originally from Nova Scotia, from the community of North Preston. And we've been talking about her passion for filmmaking and how she won an award as a human rights activist, telling stories through film, and also being sort of a role model for a lot of her peers. So, Kadeisha, why don't we go ahead and talk about something else? Um, let's talk a little bit about mindset.
Mhm.
You grew up in North Preston, Nova Scotia. I
Mhm.
live in Nova Scotia. We know some of the stories. Not a lot of people do know, and I encourage people who want to learn about Blackness in Canada, especially the African Nova Scotian experience, to visit the Black Cultural Center in Cherrybrook. There is a lot of rich history. There's a lot of resources out there. Very interesting history. But I was going to ask, you grew up in North Preston. Given the historical significance of the Preston communities
Mhm.
in the fight for racial equality in Nova Scotia, how has growing up in North Preston and now living in Toronto shaped your perspectives on the fight against inequality and race relations?
Um, it, I mean, it makes it priority, I guess I would say for me, because it's like all I know is like to be fighting for like people that I come from and for, my community, and to really making sure that our needs are met and that we're getting similar opportunities. I guess one of like the biggest things that I want to bring back home in like the future is opportunities that I'm getting here in Toronto.
Mhm.
I want to make those accessible to, kids at home and kids in the Black Scotian community, because not all of us have to move to Toronto and move to the big city to make it happen. We should be able to make it happen right at home, right in our, and to keep that cycle continuing by showing each other and having that representation for sure. Like if I could live at home and still do what I do, I would do that in a heartbeat. um so yeah, I think it does a lot. It makes it top priority for sure. Yeah.
Hmm. Interesting. And you touch on some really key points. We need more opportunities so that young persons like yourself who aspire to this, sort of novel, um, parts that are not necessarily traditionally represented in our local communities, whether it's the immigrant communities or the African Nova Scotian community, would have an opportunity to explore this. So that's a really interesting perspective, and interesting to know that you'd love to come back home and do that. Scotia is a really nice place to be. I'm sure you know that from growing up here.
For sure.
Um, Tell us a little bit about the mindset. What kind of mindset did you have to build, to cultivate, to be able to say, you know what, this is what I'm going to chase after, and I'm going to go to wherever I need to go to try to get that opportunity?
I think the mindset that I have kind of definitely starts and ends with my parents and my support system. Obviously, like, you can you can have it like from your outside external like environment, but like it kind of really has to start at home, and like it did start at home for me. Whereas like my parents made sure that when I was doing things that I didn't give up and I didn't quit, and they put me in a lot of sports and a lot of different activities, and they just showed me a lot of different things, so that I could, those habits could be created from when I was younger, so that now that I'm here by myself being put to test, it it just continues and it actually gets way stronger. And I think the best thing was, yeah, just keeping the right people around me, to reach those goals. And what was the second part of your question? I couldn't remember.
Right. I was just asking, but you've answered pretty much the question. What I wanted to say was, what about, say, perhaps peers of yours who maybe don't come from homes where they have a parent figure, or where they have both parents that are as strong and motivated as your parents were? What advice would you want to give those persons?
I mean, I think now, like, I only know the world of social media because that's the world that I grew up in. But like, I
Right.
think it's being really intentional with your time in all aspects, in all areas. When you're in school, it's like hanging out with the kids that have that mentality. Obviously, still having your friends and the people that you grew up with and whatever, but trying to find different outlets and playing different sports and doing something that isn't traditional, I guess. I was in a lot of different clubs at school, chess club, like I was doing it all kind of to find and seek the people that have different mentalities than from where I grew up, because, you know, if I stay in the same environment with the same people, I won't be able to get out of it.
Mm.
So I really had that in the back of my mind all the time, and using social media, definitely, like that's the biggest thing right now, because that's where our communities are and that's where we are as people, or online. So watching and like being intentional with what you're watching on YouTube, who you follow on Instagram, and that means whether it's celebrities, but it's the celebrities that are promoting good things into your brain, like Will Smith's and Jay, like, like those types of people that have something good to offer.
Hmm.
And obviously, like I'm young and everyone's young and we still want to have fun and just do fun things, but trying to take an hour out of your day at least to watch an interview with Oprah or something, like something that is going to put you ahead of the curve. And just, yeah, being intentional with that, going to the panels, going to the events in your area, because they're happening. It's just a matter of finding them. And then once you get connected with that network, you're going to be locked in for a long time. Yeah.
Networking. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for joining, fellow viewers. If you're just joining us, this is Unfiltered with Chaps McFarlane. We have Miss Provo, who's our guest. Here we've been talking about her experiences and how that has shaped her worldview and some of the wonderful things that she's doing. So let's, please, if you're watching and you want others to enjoy this awesome conversation, please share, start a watch party if you can. And encourage others to join. You won an award as a human rights activist. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the things that you were doing in the lead up to that nomination?
Honestly, if I'm honest about that, it
as
was
a human rights activist.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry. Yeah. It's kind of interesting because I started the YouTube channel in 2017, kind of just like wanting to get out there and try something new. I watched so many YouTubers, so I just was like, okay, well, I can use a camera and I can make videos, and I specifically wanted to talk about my community and, you know, how important it was to me because I grew up feeling that. And so, you know, you're just kind of going through things, you're making videos, you're connecting with your friends, with your family, and I really like to interview people. So that was kind of like my lane in the YouTube space. And from that, I guess that just, you know, Nova Scotia being such a small place, when one person knows about something, everyone knows about something.
That's right.
So it became, you know, Facebook. Everyone's sharing it on Facebook. They're sharing it on Instagram, everywhere pretty much. And then the news started to reach out to me and be like, we want to interview you for your work that you're doing on YouTube. And it becomes, you know, this young person who is from the community of North Preston that is doing something that we didn't get to see before. So that was getting a lot of attention, and I just wanted to keep creating. Like, I just wanted to, that stuff didn't really, it's not that it didn't matter to me or I didn't care about it, but it was just, it wasn't good nor bad in my world. It was just happening. So from there, people were paying attention, and I just kept trying to push content out into the world because I really enjoyed it. And then I moved to Toronto and for school, and like, again, people are still paying attention, and then they're like, we want, someone nominated you for this award and you've won. We want to bring you back home to receive it. And I was like, oh, wow. And it was in a time where I was feeling really like I felt really down on myself because I was in the transition from biology to wanting to change my major. So it was really weird that I got that email, and I was really surprised, honestly. But I guess it just came from me telling the truth and really seeking truth and not being afraid to share it. And that's something that I really pride my work in, is really taking it down to the real, and like I can only share what I can see, you know. So I think that really gravitated towards people, and getting that award was kind of that highlight. Yeah, for sure.
Well, if there's any lesson that can be drawn from that, I think the lesson is that, you know, when you're down, do not give up. Do not think that that is all. Maybe some of the good that you've done in the past might just return to help you, uplift you from that moment. So we should all keep doing our best and doing the things we love and putting passion into it, because we never know which one of it or where it will take us one day. And funny enough, you were talking about creating content. I just wanted to ask you as a side, because I'm also a content creator. I love creating content. And it seems as if once you get into it, there's something addictive about it. I don't know if you experience the same thing.
Yeah, I definitely do. I mean, it's a little bit different with me, like putting YouTube videos out, because like it takes me a long time to like edit a video, but then just even putting content on other social platforms, I'm finding like since I started, it's like I have to post something every single day on
Mm-hmm.
at least one platform. And it becomes like, you know, a lot of people will say that social media is draining and it's not good for your mental health, and in some ways that is true. But at the same time, when you're doing those intentional things by only following people that motivate you or give you something good, then you can kind of not eliminate, but kind of push those other negatives to the side because you're being intentional with your time. So I try to put good things out into the world and good things on my social media because I know people look to me for those things. And yeah, once you start creating, you just want to create more and you just want to put out more and you want to be consistent, which I think that's what you're doing with this too, which is really cool. Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Now let's shift a little bit and talk about this is a March on Unfiltered. We term this Women's Month. I know we should appreciate our women, every day. But because of the International Women's Day on March 8th, we had decided on the show that for the whole month of March we would have only women, so that we could really tell different stories from different perspectives and really get their perspectives on a range of issues. So I was just going to ask you, what are some of the works that you are doing with the towards women empowerment and girls especially, because I know that that's something that's also close to your heart.
Yeah. Well, I guess everything I'm kind of doing is always centered around women, especially women of color.
Right.
Because they've done so much for me in my life and getting me to where I am. If it wasn't for those strong women from my community and across the world, even, I wouldn't be able to walk into a room as comfortably as I do. So that's like my duty and, like I said, my responsibility, and it becomes top priority to create things centered around women. Just recently, last Sunday, I just released this video that I directed, the first video that everyone's getting to see. And
Yes, congratulations
thank
on,
you.
on, on that release. I watched that and it was really powerful.
Yeah, it's called Propose to Her Melanin. It's a poet from Toronto. His name is Nigel Birch that wrote the piece. And, he reached out to me because he knows that this is the type of work that I like to do, and that I'm good at it. So he kind of was like, I really want you on this. I've assistant directed some of his other stuff that he's done. She's like, I want this to be your thing. So you get to direct it, you get to make your vision come to life, all of that. And that was really powerful for me because, to be in a room with so many other powerful Black women, and just women in general, you get to create magic. And it's important that your show is now featuring all women for this month, because our stories are powerful and needed for the world. So I guess like some other things that I do or try to do is really stay connected with the younger girls in my community,
Right.
and really reach out to them. Like now I'm on TikTok with them all the time and like doing
Mm.
little videos, and just really keeping up and staying relevant for them, because it's one thing to see like role models. One thing that I know in my community, for example, when I was growing up, it's like you have role models, but like if they're not, you don't feel like they're on the ground level with you, you don't feel connected.
Mm.
So I really try to stay on the ground, regardless of how much success is in my life or how people may see me. I have to stay connected to them first because, like I said, they're like at the top of my list in terms of priority.
Right. Right.
And my success is their success.
Mm.
So I really take pride in that. And yeah.
You make an interesting connection between an interesting difference between being a role model versus, I think, mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
When you say, you could be a role model, but, you also need to have people on the ground that
Yep.
are connected to the people that are looking up and saying, I could do this. How can I get there? What do I need to do? What kind of mindset? So tell us a little bit about that mentoring, because I think that's a really big thing, especially in the Black communities.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to take it more seriously, because I mean, I had mentors. I had so many mentors, definitely had so many mentors. Um, but at the same time, there are people that like once I grew up, I met, and I'm like, why didn't I know you when I was growing up?
Right.
You know?
Right.
Like, why weren't you around? Like, where were you? You were off being successful, but like I didn't see that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like we really have to change our idea of it, because it doesn't matter how, you know, we could all be out here fighting a fight and gaining success and meeting new people and all of this, but what good is it if no one knows about it? And like
Mm-hmm.
no one on the ground knows about it. Like none of the kids know about it. Like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the other people may know, but the people that matter don't know. So it's really like we just have to be careful with it, and really taking pride in mentorship in the Black community, because like you said, it's so crucial to our success, and it's honestly it fuels you, like when you're connected to the youth in the community, like you stay ready to go to war because you see them all the time, and you see why you're doing what you're doing, and
Right.
that keeps you kind of, you know, turning all the time. Yeah.
Right, right. And also there's a certain level of groundedness
Mm-hmm.
that you know you hold yourself to some level of humility, I would say, realizing that, you know, this is where you came from, and now even though you're there to give back, but it reminds you of the struggle,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that's very important as we go forward and become successful in
Yeah.
many things, to keep that connection. Let me ask you this: as an activist or somebody that delves in that world, you live in Toronto, there's a lot of activism now around, you know, all kinds of issues. I would sum it up as issues of inequality.
Mm-hmm.
It's huge right now, whether it be racial or you know, whether it be gender, you know, so all across the board. But do you want to tell me what issues you're most passionate about of all the things that you do?
I mean,
The,
it changes all the time.
the top one.
Top priorities. Um, I think one of the things that it's a theme that I always kind of come back to, is just media representation.
Mm,
Um,
that's a
I've
good one.
Yeah, like whenever I get a chance, when I was in school, like when in high school, I would every time I got a chance to write an essay about anything, when they gave me the freedom, I always chose to write about misrepresentation in media, and how we are not represented accurately in movies, in news, and all of that stuff. So I always come back to that theme, and like that's a really big issue to me because I can only be what I can see. I
Mm-hmm.
um and so I hold that one really close to me, and even just like the connection between, you know, whether someone's coming in to have to do a story on say a basketball player in North Preston, for example. um you know, as when connecting with the community, they have to do it in a certain way, and also the community has to respond in a certain way. So just kind of
Right.
really mend that relationship and study it a little bit more so that it's a little bit smoother as we're going, and that when we want to approach you with the story, we know who to go to and who to trust. A lot of it is a lot to do with trust.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would say definitely media and representation in media is a really big topic for me, because it kind of filters down to everything else.
Yes.
You know, like whether it's with gun violence or whether it's mental health or any of those things, it starts with the media, because that's what we see the most, and that's what we're
Right.
connected the most. So if we
Right.
get that dealt with, then the other things, we can then focus on the other things a little bit easier. It's still not easy, but you know what I mean. So
Right.
media is definitely at the top of my list, I would say. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And that is one of the inspirations behind the creation of this platform, is that too often, you know, the mainstream media, you know, caters to certain interests. And that's good and fine, you know, but we also know that the people's stories need to be told somehow, and that the people's reality needs to be told somehow.
Yeah.
And that is what motivated me to also want to create a platform to open up a space for diverse conversations, for people to be able to freely exchange opinion without fear, and to understand that, you know, relationships are what binds us in our common and shared humanity. And we can have conversations and disagree on any range of issues, But if we have a good relationship that we've cultivated, then that is never going to be a point of division. That brings me to this. I wanted to ask you, is activism on its own capable of bringing the desired change on the issues of racial equality, or do Black activists need to do more than simply being activists?
I think it depends on our definition of activism, because, you know, I mean, I have no dictionary definition, but to me that means being active and actually being out and doing the things instead of just speaking about them and talking about them. So if we all focused on that, and if we did less speaking about and more doing, we would actually probably be in a different situation. But I mean, like, I think it just has a lot to do with leadership, I guess, and how we're leading each other and how we're creating and building other leaders. Because, you know, what's the sense of doing the work if it's not going to continue when we're not here, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you something on that train of thought. So, for example, you know, we know that our communities have had, you know, problems with law enforcement. So that's just one issue there. So, would you say that we need to get more people from our communities into law enforcement? Similar thing, you know, if our communities are having problems with education, we get more of our people in education. Do you think that approach, and that's what I meant when I was asking the question, do we need to transition, or do we need this transformation where we're not just reactive activists, I think, to the ills that are being perpetrated, but we are also getting into these institutions where the institutional racism exists, and also becoming actors in there, so that, as you say, we can have continuity of the work that has been done by so many of the activists out there, but also it can also help us in governance, right? What are your thoughts?
I think it does start with being proactive and preventative, I guess, instead of, like you said, being reactive to things. And of course, you know, having more of our faces in law enforcement or as educators or teachers, whatever, that could help. But also, like, getting our allies to be part of the fight too, and like understanding like that this is a human issue, you know. This isn't a Black issue, this isn't a, you know, a Hispanic issue, this isn't a like indigenous issue, this is a human issue. So if we're all kind of fighting towards those things, then we'll have a better world, like, just by default. So yeah, I think it's definitely being preventative and proactive, instead of waiting for the things to happen. We're kind of seeing this right now with coronavirus and all of the talk around it. We're being very preventative by canceling schools and canceling events, and, you know, we're being preventative by taking those measures instead of waiting until 50 people get the virus, and then we have to, you know, when one person has it, we're just going to stop everything so that we can make sure everyone else is safe. So I think if we kind of applied those same rules that we're applying to this situation to some of the work that we're doing in the world every day, let's prevent it before it happens, you know? Yeah.
I really like that philosophy and the example that you've used, but I like mostly when you said that, you know, this isn't a Black issue, this isn't, you know, an issue of the races, this is a human issue. And I think that goes to the very core of many of the issues we face, that are just, we have a shared humanity, and if we see them as human issues, just like we say women's rights are human rights, you know, we would all be more proactive in trying to remedy these inequalities and discrimination, rather than, you know, being reactive to them. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, fellow viewers. If you're joining us, my guest in the studio is Ms. Kardeisha Provo. We've had a conversation on a range of issues, and please like, share our videos, encourage others to join. This is Unfiltered. I wanted to ask you something about entrepreneurship. You know, you talked about your entrepreneurial spirit. We've talked about some of the things you're doing. Tell us a little bit about entrepreneurship, especially within our Black communities.
Yeah, I think it's necessary. I think maybe before we were able to survive by working for other people and working in that space, but I think now in 2020, it's actually a necessity that we create and own our own businesses and basically take up that space, because it's, I don't know, I think it's tough navigating, of course, a new world. That's kind of how it always is. But at the same time, I think it's important. Like, you know, my brother started a business that my nephews get to now see and have that representation in house. They get to work for their uncle when they're under 14, under 15. That's their first job. So that ownership piece really, it goes into a lot of different it affects a lot of different things moving forward. Is like, we're owning our own businesses, we're also owning our own education, we're also owning our own homes, or just owning things, having ownership in our communities, and that will affect us in a positive way. So I think, yeah, it's we're doing it out of necessity now, and getting creative with it. You know, you don't have to have, everyone doesn't have to have a clothing business, or you know, the typical things. Like, you could have a cupcake business, or you could, you know, do something, you could paint murals. Like, you could really be creative with it now because people are ready to support. So I think every young person should kind of dabble in the entrepreneurship world. Yeah.
Right, you're absolutely right, and isn't the very nature of telling our stories from our own perspective entrepreneurial, right? If we really, because I think when you talk to a lot of folks, one of the things you hear is, our stories are not told enough. Our history is not taught enough. So we have all these things that we want done more than they are currently being done. And so my question is, if we want these things done and we have to do them because no other person is going to do them, doesn't that in itself require that we develop, in a sense, each and every one of us, an entrepreneurial mindset?
Yeah.
Because I have to come up with creative ways to tell the stories. You have to come up with creative ways of telling the history, So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's definitely a really good point, because like I said, like, it has a lot to do with ownership. And like, if we want to own our stories and own the way that they're told, and we want to even profit off of our own stories, we have to create infrastructure and systems that we are owning the business or owning the production company or anything like that. So yeah, you have to have an entrepreneurial mindset with that, because you don't want to hand off this thing that's so valuable to you to someone else who doesn't understand it, or isn't going to take it with that same value. So yeah, I think it's developing that and getting it from the people that are already within your community too is kind of cool, because they're coming from it with that angle. Asking your local, business owner to go out for coffee and hear what they have to think and hear what they have to say as a young person entering into space, and just kind of keeping everything within, supporting each other too, because that's how we move forward, and we move forward in the way that represents us the best. Yeah.
Right. So tell us a little bit, how can our viewers follow you? And I know that you are on LinkedIn, but how can they connect to your YouTube channel?
Yeah, so all of my social platforms are Kardeisha Provo, no spaces or anything like that. But if they wanted, they could go to www.kardeishaprovo.com, and that has links to all of my other social platforms. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if you tagged me here, but everything is also on my Facebook. So yeah.
Right. No, you're tagged in this video, and I will share the video once it's uploaded up on YouTube with you, but you're tagged in it, so it should be on your page. But fellow viewers, thank you for joining. This is Unfiltered with Cheps McFarlane. My conversation has been going on with our guest, Kardeisha Provo. She's a filmmaker, she's an entrepreneur, and she's also a human rights activist. We've just been talking about how you can reach her if you want to watch any of the films. She just did her first feature production. It's called
Proposed to her melanin.
Proposed to her melanin. And I did watch the video yesterday, and it's a really powerful video. It's a short video, but it's really powerful. You get the how do they call it? You get sort of the chills. You know, when you watch it. The music is beautiful. It was a beautiful production. So check her out, follow her, and support the work that she does in mentoring and trying to help inspire our young folks. Ms. Kardeisha Provo, thank you very much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you coming, especially on short notice. I really do appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to having you on again sometime in the future, and we'll check in to see what other works you're working on and just what you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I really appreciate you reaching out. So thanks.
Yes. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you if you were joining the show just now. We are actually wrapping up, so you'd have to go back and rewatch the show. I bet you it's a very impactful show that we had, a good conversation with our guest, Ms. Kardeisha Provo. I'm your host. Like, share our videos, invite others to join. Next week, look out for another interesting show. We are continuing our March month of the woman show here on Unfiltered, and this month celebrating all of our women. We have been having female guests appear on the show, and we've had a really great conversation. Thank you, Kadeisha, and fellow viewers, have a great Saturday evening. Go out, enjoy. I know that there's all the scare about the coronavirus, but hey, you can get outside, stand outside your house, get some fresh air, enjoy the Saturday evening, and don't get all caught up in the anxiety of what's going on. Relax.
Yes.
All right. I will see you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. Bye.